Coming up on the Backwards Hat CMO pod, today we are going to talk about product-led growth and whether or not it is a strategy that you should actually be using for your company. Now, a lot of you out there have a pretty good idea at this point about what a PLG strategy is. And I'm sure many of you have actually been at companies at one point where they said, our strategy going forward is going to be a product-led growth strategy, which was then probably followed up a couple months later with a return to traditional sales and marketing strategies. And one of the reasons for that is that product-led growth strategies actually take a significant amount of time. Now, if you're a startup and you've just got a couple $1 million in funding, how long can you really wait for word of mouth to actually kick in before you're forced into what is basically known as traditional sales and marketing strategy, tactics, and techniques? And the answer to that question is you probably don't have, and you probably haven't raised enough capital to actually truly make a PLG model work. Now, I've been in several venture capital boardrooms in the past, and I can tell you confidently that, of course, board members would like to see PLG models work. And it's pretty simple. It's because you're not burning a ton of cash with a PLG model. But if you're the CEO or CMO or CRO of a startup and you're in a VC boardroom and you're talking about PLG models, you better have a strong understanding of exactly what your company's product market fit is. Do you have the kind of customers that actually will follow a PLG structure and ultimately turn into paying customers? If the answer to that question is no, or if there's any hesitation, what you should do at that point is absolutely develop a traditional sales and marketing strategy. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with running both a PLG strategy and a traditional strategy at the same time. But I have to say, what actually spurred on today's podcast was a LinkedIn post that a good friend of mine wrote. And I'm not going to get into who this was. And he wrote this post simply because he was talking about things related to hiring senior leadership at startups soon enough in the process. And why do so many startups, particularly in the AI space, waste so much time before they go out and bring in a real CRO, or they bring in a real CMO, or they bring in a head of customer service? Why do they waste so much time and hesitate so much to actually bring in those key people into their companies? And I started to, give this some thought. And of course, I've been around the block a few times in the Silicon Valley, or as I like to call it, the Silicon Valley. And I can tell you what basically has happened over the last couple of years is a lot of these AI related technologies have been told by their venture capital firms to actually hold on, wait, don't spend money. You don't need to go hire a CRO. You don't need to go hire a head of marketing. You don't need to bring in a head of customer service yet. Just get the product out and use the traditional word of mouth. And when you actually start to think about what a PLG model really is, it really is simply word of mouth. Now, there might be a great new restaurant in your vicinity, within 10 miles of where you live, but you have no idea about it. The only way that you would, in a PLG model, hear about this particular restaurant would be from word of mouth. You've got a friend or a buddy or a family member that went to the restaurant. But if you didn't, if the restaurant was entirely relying on a PLG model, there's a good chance that they wouldn't survive. They would literally die before they had enough people actually coming in. Traditional sales and marketing tactics for that restaurant would certainly come into play. Getting food critics to that restaurant, getting people talking about that restaurant via social media, advertising locally. Look, there's 100 different things that restaurant could do to get itself off the ground, which would be significantly more easier than running a PLG model. Look, at the end of the day, the PLG model is pretty simple. It's word of mouth. You get customer acquisition, you have customer retention, and then you have expansion. Those are the three key principles of the PLG model. But if you can't get that customer acquisition to happen at the very beginning, you're probably not going to survive. So as my friend's post actually pointed out, if these younger startups had actually brought in some experts in both sales and marketing and in customer service earlier in their companies, they probably would have avoided a lot of the mistakes that they've made. And I know I'm generalizing now, but a lot of the mistakes that they would have made by actually relying 100% on a PLG model. All right, North America, that is it for today's Backwards Hat CMO pod. I love to hear what you think about this particular topic. Go ahead and drop us a note if you can. All right, for the Backwards Hat CMO pod, I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your business week.